1, 2, 3, 4.
Bonus episode.
Bonus episode.
Episode of King of the What Now. Hello, fellow furry master thieves, and welcome to a bonus episode of King of the What Now. I'm your host, Joel, and I am going to tell you that you can press circle to enter the vault code whenever you want.
How many times are you going to tell me that?
Every single time you have a vault code to enter.
Oh, good, good. I am your co-host, Joel?
No. You've stolen my identity. That's how master of a thief you are.
I'm your co-host, Kat, and I am a badass lady cop who doesn't want to be sexualized, but I am naked for most of the game.
Only half naked. And then joining us today, we have a very special guest. So, Kelsey, a.k.a. @Sherpa on Twitter, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello there, Kat and Joel. Thank you very much for the warm welcome. I am a public health enthusiast. I really believe in the power of washing your hands.
Now, what does that have to do with the game?
You should not have any Cheeto dust on your controller.
Yes, perfect. Absolutely. Also, you just know that Bentley is a freak for cleanliness.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yes, he's on the gang every second. That van is stocked with Purell for years.
Absolutely.
He and Murray have almost killed each other a couple of times because Murray is just, he doesn't care, and Bentley cares too much, perhaps. If you can hear a loud puppy screaming her head off in the background, we are not torturing puppies here. We are just trying to let the good girl go to sleep, and she does not want to.
Yeah, fun fact about Aussies, they actually can't legally go to sleep. They don't know how.
It's true.
So...
Absolutely. So today's episode is about the Sly series, and it might be helpful for our guests to know, not our guests, but our listeners to know what our kind of familiarity is with it. Thank you. I know words. So I played through Sly 4, and I think I finished Sly 1 back in the day in college with former co-host of the show, Curtis. I did not remember basically anything from these games other than you can pickpocket and Carmelita Fox does a belly dance. I wonder why that one stuck in my mind more than anything else. I replayed through 4 and basically 100%ed it. Didn't get the mask, but I got everything else. Kat was there experiencing the story with me. I played a bit of 1 last night and this morning. Didn't get very far, got to Miss Ruby, the third area, and I played the first area in Sly 2. I know nothing about Sly 3 except that's where they introduce a character named Penelope. So I am not the world's biggest fan, but I am a fairly decent fan.
So would you call yourself the relative newbie?
I mean, I would call you the relative newbie, technically.
Ah, snap, I got caught.
I was the one pressing the buttons, so... You pressed a couple of buttons, yeah.
I'm going to let Kelsey do hers next, though.
What would you like to know?
I don't know. How many times have you played through each of the games? And did you play them when they originally came out? Or did you play them when the remaster came out?
Okay. So I consider myself a relative newcomer to the series. I never played these games back on the PS2. I never heard of them until about 2 years ago. And I feel very sorry I didn't, because these totally would have been my jam. My biggest emotion after joy of playing these games is regret that I didn't know about their existence. So I played through them on the PS Vita throughout this year. And I must say that is a great way to play these games. The Vita is a great way to experience PlayStation 2 games. They really pop on that tiny screen.
King of the What Now, sponsored by PlayStation Vita. Did we get that big PlayStation Vita money?
I regret to inform you that we have another special guest joining us, and it's Master Chief. Sorry, we got a different brand deal for this episode.
It's fine, because actually my familiarity with this series is none, because I grew up in an Xbox family. My dad is very clear, even to this day, that the only 2 games he plays are Halo and Destiny 2. And that's it. So we played a fair number of Xbox games. Maybe one of these days I'll get you to do Psychonauts and Blinks the Time Cat. but which furry anthro animal game is a really good one. But I did watch you and former co-host Curtis play through 4 in college, and I watched former co-host Curtis play through bits and pieces of the original 3 because he was so excited that 4 was coming out.
When you weren't at class, like that's kind of, it wasn't that you were boycotting it or anything like that. So just we are talking about what kind of families we were raised in as far as video games. I was Nintendo through and through. So like any Mario, any Zelda that came out when I was a kid, I probably played it. I probably did like all of the side missions, got all the stars. PlayStation, the only series I really stan is Ratchet and Clank. I played like all of those multiple times through. I didn't get to Sly until college, and Curtis was like, this game was really fun. I played it a lot with me and my brother, and I was like, okay. And it's pretty good. I like it, but I don't know if it is more my jam than the shooter of Ratchet and Clank.
I will say I'm on board with Kelsey, where I wish I had access to this as a child. Not that I needed more furry content as a child, because I was exposed to plenty of it. Shout out to Balto, for example.
Oh my goodness. So Kelsey, now that we're on the topic of what kind of houses we were raised in, were you a Nintendo girl? Did you not play video games? Everything?
My parents did not really buy me video games much, so I didn't own a home console until the PlayStation 2, but I experienced them through friends' houses.
Of course.
Primarily Nintendo. So I actually did not have a clue that Sega existed for a very long time either. I never met anybody who had a Sega for a very long time. I knew a couple people with PlayStation 1s, but I got a PlayStation 2, and that's kind of where my home console experience started. And it's funny that you mentioned Ratchet and Clank, because I've heard a lot in the last year after finding out about Sly. There's kind of a saying about it, is that you were either a Ratchet and Clank kid, you were a Sly Cooper kid, or you were a Jak and Daxter kid. And I was a Jak and Daxter kid. Those were my jam. One of my friends, her parents were divorced, so her dad bought her a PlayStation 2. We played through the first Jak and Daxter probably only a few months after it originally came out. And we had many sleepovers with other friends over. We loved playing through those games. The first game, I should say. And when I finally got a PlayStation 2, I bought the second game. And we had been told by my friend's mom that the second game was basically the first game, except it had more cussing, so it was for teenagers. I don't know if that was a play on her part to discourage us from wanting to play it. For some reason, we had no interest at the time, but it was not the same game. So I rediscovered on my own how much I loved that series. I've replayed it many times. I've played it on the PlayStation 4, on the PlayStation Vita, which I do not recommend those ports. Those are terrible ports. But yeah, PlayStation 2, I think, was really the high mark of mascot platformers. That was the last time that they were really at their peak. And it's kind of all been downhill for us platformer fans, mascot platformer fans since then.
Absolutely.
Ukulele was an amazing explosion of disappointment from what I've heard. I couldn't even bring myself to play it from how bad it looked.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat there with you, Joel. Now, speaking of mascot platformers, Kat.
Blinks the Time Cat. Yes.
I have no experience with Blinks the Time Cat, but I would be willing to try it.
Okay. You would love it.
Okay. Tell me about Blinks the Time Cat.
Blinks the Time Cat is a cat who has a magic vacuum that lets him control time, and it's a platformer.
That's amazing.
That's it, yeah. In the second one, you fight a gang of evil pigs, and you get to play as the pigs sometimes, and you can design like custom logos for your gang.
Oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. Mm-hmm. This sounds kind of like Luigi's Mansion, but with a lot more zany elements added to it.
Say that's probably accurate. It's funny, it's been so long that I've forgotten most of the plot aspects of it. I just know that it was incredible. My brother and I played through it together.
Okay.
So it was a lot of me watching him play because my tolerance for not being good at things is very low. But no, it was a lot of fun. And also, Blinks was not super popular in the United States, but it was in Japan. So kind of the way we consider Master Chief, like the Xbox mascot here, Blinks is that in Japan for the Xbox. And I believe he still is, even today.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so maybe we could have another game, please?
Please? As a treat?
Yes. You are manifesting battle tanks. right?
Yes.
Yes.
Big battle tank stand.
And I am manifesting another Trauma Center game and another Blinks the Time Cat game.
You know you're a video game fan when you pick up the herald of a video game that's at least 15 years old that almost no one else remembers, and you beg whatever publisher or developer to please bring this back and make another one.
Mm-hmm.
Please, we would have world peace.
Right? Oh man. But it's funny, you and Joel were talking about your exposure to like Nintendo and Sega and everything. So Xbox, like the original Xbox, literally was the first video game console I ever heard of. I knew that handheld things were a thing because I'd been playing Pokemon since I was like 6 years old, but I didn't, for some reason, know that there were home consoles, even though my dad had like an original Nintendo when he was in his 20s. So that was very odd for me to grow up and realize, like, I thought I was a video game fan, but the first Nintendo console I ever owned was a Wii. And there were other consoles before that. And I've still got Joel's whole collection of consoles from when he was a kid and all his video games and stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting the way that video game experiences can be very insular. I was thinking about that too for myself. Like Sega in the 90s way outsold Nintendo, the 64. Never saw one. I never knew one with one.
Mm-hmm.
I knew about the 64. I played at my friends' houses all the time. We did Mario Kart. I remember parents had the boxing game that they really liked. I think Madden was a thing at that time.
Madden has always been a thing. It will always be a thing.
That's
when
true.
the earth crumbles to dust, there will be Madden.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are fools to think we will outlive Madden. So, and then I didn't know anybody aside from one person who had a PlayStation 3. Everybody I knew when the Xbox 360 was big had an Xbox 360. The only person I knew who had a PlayStation 3 was my calculus teacher because she won it in a raffle.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I remember big discourse when the 360 came out about PlayStation versus 360. And I got into a lot of fights, mostly on my dad and brother's behalf, about the 360 being better. And then my dad bought a PlayStation 3.
Oh my
And
goodness.
to this day, I still don't know why, because he doesn't play those games. He only plays Halo and Destiny 2. And before Destiny 2 existed, he only played Halo. But he bought one, and I was like, you've betrayed everything this family stands for.
I wonder if he bought it as a Blu-ray player, maybe?
He might have, but why wouldn't he just buy a Blu-ray player? He might have bought it. Was the PlayStation 3 the one that introduced the motion controls?
Yes. But they followed the Wii, because the Wii was the one that really... I mean, you couldn't find a Wii for like a year and a half because they were sold out.
Right. And we had the Wii before we had the PlayStation 3. So he might have bought it because, like, look at this cool new thing it can do that's very on brand for him.
Yeah. They had the PlayStation 3 because, of course, Xbox and PlayStation followed suit with the Wii. So the Xbox had the Kinect, which I ended up buying, used it a little bit for Just Dance, and then...
Like you do.
Like you do, and never touched it again. I still have it, but PlayStation 3 had the wand move controllers. So maybe there was a particular game that spoke to him about that.
Maybe.
What if Mr. Cat's dad was a huge fan of Disney and wanted to experience that mixed with just a little bit of Final Fantasy? Because you can't experience Kingdom Hearts on the Xbox.
Now explain to me, what is Kingdom Hearts? Do we have time for that?
We do not have 6 hours or a sufficient blackboard for that. So, like I said before, Kat and I have not had a chance to go through and play all 3 of the original trilogy kind of extensively. Kelsey, you replayed through it pretty recently, so we can talk about, how the game changed or how the characters changed or what was bad about the first one that got improved over time. But unfortunately, Kat and I aren't going to be able to be like, yes, the 4th level in the 3rd game was fantastic. I have no idea.
What I will say is that Joel and I went through and we played a little bit of each of the first 3 so that we could kind of get an idea of how it compares to number 4.
I technically didn't get to 3. But I played the first 2.
Shh, pretend for the audience.
Right.
Absolutely.
Manifest it.
So, Kelsey, if you had to pick your favorite of these 3 games, which would it be?
Whoa, hold on. I'm sorry.
What?
Don't we usually do some sort of succinct summary?
Oh, yeah. I can handle that.
Okay.
The Sly franchise is a series of mascot platformers, as Kat already alluded to, featuring the character Sly Cooper, who is the latest in like 50,000 generations of Master Thieves. In each game, you go to different areas and you have to fight some kind of criminal mastermind, and the end boss is always the mastermind who controls the other masterminds. In the first game, they have stolen pieces of the Thievius Raccoonus, which is the encyclopedia on how to steal things good. So the bad guy stole the thing that teaches you how to steal. Cooper gets them all back, and then he has to face the evil Clockwork, who is some kind of ancient nemesis of the Cooper clan, who turned himself into a machine because that's how angry he was. He gets defeated and dismantled, and in the second game, you have to collect different pieces of Clockwork that criminals are using to do evil criminally things, and that's basically it. I don't know what 3 is about. You get a band of characters together and you do a heist, probably.
Kelsey, hit us up. Quick one-sentence summary of 3.
Has one of the best pirate minigames that honestly could have been its own game of all time.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. What do the bad guys want in that game? You know, so like Clockworks wants to kill the Cooper clan. The second game was greed, but they were using Clockwork parts to do it. So what did the guy in 3 care about?
Well, the guy in 3, I feel, of the 3 main games, is probably the weakest main villain. I feel like they didn't really do justice to him for the final boss fight. That aside, he is trying to break into the Cooper vault because he's the one, I believe, who killed Sly's father.
Okay.
So his whole thing is that Sly is going to betray his friends, and he's not a very good friend to them. And that's what he's kind of trying to prove. But of course, that's not true. Sly Cooper is really about how friendship is magic.
It really is.
My little raccoon.
Now, if no one has played these games, I will say this takes place in an anthropomorphic world. So Sly is a raccoon. The brains of the Operation Bentley is a turtle. The brawn of the group, Murray, is a hippo. And the main, I guess love interest is the correct word, but the inspector who wants to arrest Cooper, but is not actually an antagonist, or she's an antagonist, but she's not a villain, is Carmelita Fox, and she is a fox, surprisingly enough.
Yes, she is. She has very large breasts.
Yes, and yeah, absolutely, and a big fluffy tail that you just want to like.
I was just very surprised how large they were for a game that I assume was meant for a younger audience.
Yeah, I think it's making fun of the spy genre. You know, Bond always gets the hot girl, and so that's what Carmelita Fox is supposed to be.
You know, that was really the PlayStation 2 mascot platformers. Unfortunately, for better or for worse, I can't speak for Ratchet and Clank because I have not played those yet. I do have intentions to play, but in Jak and Daxter, Daxter, of course, is an Otzel, which is a combination otter and weasel. So he's a little orange fella running around, and he is just so pervy and always objectifying women. And of course, like there's always, when he's around, there's always like the camera focuses on breasts and, you know, whatever. He's always objectifying women. And I remember very specifically, I've tried to find this commercial on YouTube. I'm sure it exists and I'm not looking for it right. But I do remember there being a commercial where they had real life women in skimpy dresses, but with the animated characters of Jak and Daxter walking in, like picking up these women in like, it wasn't like a locker room, but kind of like on that idea. And so you get kind of that a little bit here too. Like Carmelita is like, there's a sexualized factor to her.
Candy Kong in Donkey Kong 64, which we will eventually cover. That is my sworn promise to you, listeners. But Candy Kong would fall over at the slightest breeze because she's so top heavy. There are cute girls in Ratchet and Clank, if I remember, but I don't think that they have those assets that, you know, would appeal to a more physical audience or whatever. I don't know where I'm going with the sentence.
See Lombax lady in one of the games?
But she doesn't have huge titties. I think that I think she has similar build to Ratchet, more or less.
Yeah, I remember seeing on Twitter, apparently a developer said there was a big fight on whether or not to make her sexualized with big titties, and they won out that there would be no titties.
This is getting too far ahead, because we're not talking about Sly 4, Thieves in Time, I think it's called, but there in the first area, you do a sexy geisha dance as Murray. And although I'm not really a fan of it's funny because a guy is doing something that a woman normally does, it does subvert the trope. You're not having a sexualized character dance to distract the guards. And then in the fifth area, you have Carmelita do it, and you shake the controller in order to shake her ass. So, yeah, I do get that these games seem to be kind of self-aware and kind of like parodies in of themselves. They don't take themselves too seriously for the most part, but there are bits and pieces where I'm kind of like, in a perfect world, I don't know if we would have that joke, or that joke wouldn't exist in almost every game of this genre type of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of a thing where you could tell maybe there should have been one or two more women in the writer's room. They could have said, hey, let's tone that down a little bit, here and there. Not to say that it's bad or anything, just it reads a little bit off.
Yeah, time and place kind of thing.
Now I have one more question. You say this game takes place in an anthropomorphized world, a la Zootopia, Beastars, Brand New Animals. So, does it have the hard-hitting social metaphors for racism that we all love about this genre and definitely want in our anthropomorphic media?
No, it's absolutely absent. I want to talk about like the positives of this series before I talk about the negatives, but I will say that the story never really gets very deep. I alluded to that already. It's mostly just we have to steal a thing from some guys who are going to do some fiendishly evil scams to make money. There's parent death. One of the characters becomes paralyzed in one of the games and is wheelchair bound. So there are serious moments, but the story overall is pretty light and fluffy. So there's just no room for racism here.
No, none whatsoever.
Yeah, I just had to be snarky about that because for the most part, I don't think it's a good metaphor because people aren't eating each other.
Yeah. The white people are not more likely to eat Chinese people or, black people or vice versa for any particular reason.
So, now that we've got the succinct summary out of the way, I believe you had a question you were trying to ask our dear guest.
Yes, absolutely. So, of the original trilogy, Kelsey, which is your favorite game? Do you think that they just improved with time? Just a straight linear progression?
I want to say yes. I have struggled going back on this back and forth on whether 2 or 3 is my favorite. I think I'll go ahead and say 2 is my favorite. I think that's the general consensus for what I've seen 2 is that 2 is probably the best one. However, I feel like there are a lot of aspects of 3 that are really important that are kind of get overlooked. So in the second game is when you finally gain control and are able to move throughout the open world as Murray and Bentley.
Absolutely.
However, you can't pickpocket with them in game 2. You finally gain that ability in 3, or if you can, it's not very well done. And there's also strategically placed jumps throughout the worlds for Bentley and Murray to get around, so it makes it easier to play as them. Because in the first game, you're mostly only playing as Sly. There's a few mini games where you're playing as the other two, but for the most part, it's just Sly. Second game, you can play as Bentley and Murray, but it's just not as fun.
Why would you? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. This world, there's posts, there's wires. Sly can hop across spikes and whatnot. It's really designed to be taken advantage of by a nimble character like Sly. So the third game is really where having the whole gang together, you enjoy it a lot more. And I should say Murray can't pickpocket. He can, however, mug people, which is perfect for his character. And I think they started to excel a lot better in the third game with the mini games. As I mentioned earlier, that pirate minigame, which is, I don't even know if it's in the game for 10% of it. And I was just like mind blown with how good this was. This was, I believe that was 05, which is 7 or so years before Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you ever heard of this game. It came out in about 08 or 09. There was an MMO from Disney for Pirates of the Caribbean. And it was a blast, I have to say. I played a lot of it. And of course, Xbox has Sea of Thieves now, and that's a blast to play as pirates. But Sly Cooper really did it first with pirates. That's a really fun mini game, and it stands out because their vehicle car combat and just how they control, in my opinion, stinks.
Yeah, no, it really does. With all of the references to previous games in Sly 4, I'm really surprised that they didn't have a pirate ancestor.
Me too. If I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but if they did make a 5th game, a pirate ancestor would be perfect for.
It'd be amazing.
Yes, they need it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but going back to Sly 2, why I think it's probably my favorite and the best is that it has probably what is the best story out of all of them. The story is loose throughout all of them. You know, it kind of hits more overarching beats rather than moment to moment.
Sure.
It's all about, pickpocketing and just kind of sneaking around, not disturbing the guards because Sly is very fragile. And I really like how they played that up. You should be more of a sneaky thief. He's a raccoon. He's not going to take a lot of hits.
Oh man, yeah. But no, just to agree with your point, it's not like Sly learns a valuable lesson in friendship from the mugshot level or from, the Black Baron level. It's just kind of like in general, jump around, steal some stuff.
Yeah. In game 2, of course, that's the longest game. I believe it takes the longest to play. It has more than just 5 areas. I think it's 7 or 8 areas to play, which I think the rest of them stick to 5.
I'm pretty sure.
So it's definitely the longest game, but it doesn't feel bloated, and it probably has the best villains. It has, elements of betrayal in it. It introduces another investigator from Interpol.
Nayla or something like that?
Yeah, Neela. So it starts out with trying to track down all of the clockwork parts. It starts out with a cold open for a heist into a museum, which is awesome. But Neela wants to work with Carmelita, of course, and then it doesn't take very long and she betrays Carmelita. And it's like, oh, okay, well, is she just betraying her because she's that type of coworker who really wants to step on everybody and, just use everybody? And then it turns out that no, she's actually kind of evil, and you keep going along and seeing
I called it.
how evil she is.
Carmelita represents that women in the workplace should work together for a common goal. And Neela is, I am #girlboss, and I'm going to be number 1. All other women will submit to me. They will not go as high in the hierarchy.
Girl boss, gatekeep,
Gaslight.
Yes.
Absolutely. No, Joel was playing through 2 earlier, and the minute I saw Neela on screen, I went, they wouldn't introduce a second cop unless she's a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
As a bad guy.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, as alluded to by Joel, second game does end in a slight bit of tragedy because, of course, Bentley is paralyzed and Murray believes it's his fault. So it ends on that note, which is, I would say, probably the most serious note of the entire series.
Absolutely.
It's, for the most part, just a fun, breezy game. It doesn't get too dark. That's probably the darkest moment.
I would agree with that. And I mean, it is kind of interesting that the story that introduced Bentley as a field operative, they make a big deal in the tutorial level, like, this is the first time you've been on the field, Bentley, how are you feeling? He's like, I'm scared. So he learns to be a little bit more confident, but he's afraid of the risk, and then the bad thing happens anyways. Mm-hmm. But then he comes back and, Kat commented on it when we were playing through 4, but pretty good as far as I can tell, wheelchair representation.
Yeah.
So good for Bentley.
Yeah, I have to say that was part of one of the things that really made me impressed with the whole series is how well they handle disability representation, especially going from 2 to 3. As I mentioned, they put in the jumps so Murray and Bentley are able to get around a lot more easy, and just able to give them the pickpocketing or mugging abilities. So they really make them feel like equal parts of the gang and never, quote unquote, a burden or anything like that. You never, even though Sly is ultimately the most fun to play,
Sure.
you're never sad in 3 to play as Bentley or Murray.
Absolutely. I will say, to go back to the word burden that you just used there, in the every game that I've played recently, 1, 2, and 4, there's an intro at the beginning where Sly goes, "These are my pals. I was in an orphanarium, and these are my friends, and we formed a thief gang," right? And in the first game, he introduces Bentley as he's the smart one, and then he introduces Bentley. He kind of trails off. He goes, Bentley is the smart one, and Murray, he's he's part-time driver, full-time burden. Like, he is absolutely designed to be a butt monkey in that first game, and then he gets slightly more character development, and then in 4 he's just the fat character.
He's the beefy boy.
"Can I please have some food? Can I have a cookie for doing a job well done?" Murray, come on, man.
Stop doing my boy dirty.
Yes. I think it's a testament to how annoying Murray is, especially in game 1, but game 2, I think he's still pretty annoying. 3, there's a few elements there, but he's better. That I didn't find him annoying at all in 4, but hearing you talk about it, yes, he is annoying, but I was so annoyed by him in the first couple of games.
Absolutely.
He is. I will say, Murray is a burden. He really is. He hinders them more than he helps.
He is doing his best, is what he's a himbo.
He is a himbo.
Big and strong and nice.
He is a himbo, and he eventually comes into his true himbo power.
Yes. And can I just say, the upgrades that you get for him are my favorite, because Sly gets things that help you move around the map, which is very useful, but not always more fun than just walking around. And then Bentley gets different types of explosives and projectiles, which those are kind of fun to play with. But Murray gets like fire punches and lucha libre moves. Like, that's pretty fun to play.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Going back to the wheelchair rep really quick, I just want to say, because he's portrayed as like this big tech genius, they easily could have gotten around him being paralyzed and been like, he built himself robot legs and he doesn't count as paralyzed anymore. But they didn't. They put him in a wheelchair. And even in a wheelchair, he's part of the team.
That's a really good point, Kat. Yeah, like, his disability is not something that defines him, but it's still there.
Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, again, I haven't played through all of the games recently, but I don't remember any of the villains like kicking him over and being like, you're a cripple or something like that, right? None of them are evil about that. They're just kind of evil because we're trying to steal from you. And you're
Yes, definitely.
So, what would you say is the main appeal of the games, Kelsey? Do you think that, we've talked about the story is not the strongest element, is it just fun to run around and jump and fly, or is it the stealing, or what would you think?
That's a good question. I would say at their core, they are platformers above everything else, because normally I'm not a big stealth person, but I love the stealth in these games. So probably stealth purists would probably hate the stealth in these games. But it's not to say that the platforming is revolutionary, in my opinion. I don't think it is. I think, to use modern parlance, it understands the assignment.
Okay.
Sly, as a raccoon, as a thief, he has the cane. I ended up calling it crook for quite a bit of the 4th game without realizing it, but he has that tools of his trade, and he curls around posts as he climbs them. He very sneakily sticks to the corners of a tower as he's moving around them. He uses the wires. He can rail slide, quote unquote. He can hop to things. He's very nimble. And just the way that the 3D was used, I felt it really made the best use of 3D, probably better than a lot of other platformers like it, just because it used the platforming to highlight what the character was and what the character is about.
I agree. I think that good game design is really rooted in a combination of elements making sense, like gameplay elements making sense with the world that you're playing in. And I thought that these games did a really good job of that for the most part.
Yeah, I'll echo that absolutely. I think the thing that makes my brain want to play this game and not put the controller down is not necessarily the story aspect, but it's just running around and getting all of the collectibles. In the first game, you played little levels. It was almost like a Mario world or something, right? And then in the second game, there's kind of more of a hub world and then individual missions that take place in specific areas. And in 4, it's pretty much all in the hub world except for the occasional mission, which takes you to a more specific place. But you can find treasures hidden, and you have to get them back to the base without taking damage. There's clue bottles, and if you get them all, you get like a special power-up that makes the game easier. And there's all those kinds of things. And so it gets into my brain, makes me want to get all of the things.
Collectathon, make lizard brain tingle.
Yeah. And going back to the stealth elements too, again, probably stealth purists, maybe not the best game for them, but I really like the stealth. I don't normally like stealth very much. I tend to just blunder into things and try and figure it out from there. But this game encourages stealth because you see the big shiny thing hanging out in the guard's pocket, and you're like, oh, I can get more money. I'm stealthy instead of blundering and hitting this guard as hard as I can, even if I survive, which by the time you get to the 4th game, Sly's just slightly more durable, which I think is kind of realistic because they're, I want to say 16 in the first game. So
yeah, Wiki said that Sly was 21 in the 3rd game, and I know that time passes between each of them, so he was young in the first game.
So, I mean, it does make sense if you want to look into it. I don't know if anyone does, but I think he can only take like 2 hits in the first game, so he can take slightly more than that by the time you get to the 4th game. So that makes sense. But you want to stay stealthy because you can get more money. You can get really cool items by staying stealthy, figuring out the guards' patterns. And so it just encourages you to keep playing, even though it's a really, really simple gameplay loop. It is extraordinarily simple, and most of the guards, the big ones, of course, have their flashlights, which is really easy to figure out. I just stay out of the lights. They won't see me. The smaller ones, of course, they don't have lights, but so it's still based on visuals, so you kind of have to figure out the pattern on how far out of their peripheral vision do I need to be, and it turns out it's not that far. But still, it does encourage you to just keep playing and playing over and over, and I think they figured out what to do to just entice you to keep coming back.
Got the right formula. Absolutely.
Yeah, no. And I would say, since we're on the topic of the game's design, I think it's a testament to how well designed these games are, that when we were playing 4, right, and you have the shiny areas that you can press the circle button to jump on and do the sneaky raccoon thing, I was like, okay, yeah, obviously he's a thief. He would see spots where he could sneak around. And then you go back to the first game, and there's actually like an in-lore explanation where it's like really superior thieves can see an aura around things that will help them thieve. And like, I didn't need any of that express explanation. It just fits so well into what I was already doing.
See, I want to talk about my experience playing the first 3 overworlds in Sly 1 and the first overworld in Sly 2. Like Kelsey was saying, in the first game, if you don't have the Lucky Charm, I think it's called, you can only take 1 hit from enemies. And except for the exception of like 1 plant monster in the Bayou level, all enemies take 1 hit. So if you wanted to, you could just whack all of your enemies and you don't have to worry about being stealthy. And the coins are for lives and extra lucky charms. So it's not quite as rewarding as in the later games where you get the coins and you use that to buy things. You don't have pickpocketing in the first game, at least not up to where I played, but you do get pickpocketing in the second game, and that adds an extra element of it that's really fun. In the second game, if an enemy notices you, they will call their buddies. In a one-on-one fight, it's no big deal. You knock them over, wait till they get up, knock them over. But once they call in their friends and there's 4 of them, you start to really feel like I will die if I get caught. And so it heightens that element of stealth. And so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can really see kind of the evolution over time through the games. Having that lucky life, extra life that especially the way it pops up, it really feels archaic, you know, like a throwback definitely to Mario, obviously being the most classic of them, but just having that extra life. They did away with that, and I was happy about it, even though it was an okay mechanic. It just felt old and not quite right for that for this type of setting.
Pulls you out of the story, I think.
Yes. Similarly, the amount of tutorializing that they do in those games in the first two is pretty frustrating, and you can tell that it was a product of its time. I have no idea when voice acting became a thing in video games, like in the mainstream, what we would call AAA games now. But there's certain places where you can kind of tell that it sounded like someone was moving away from their mic during one of the cutscenes in Sly 2. And the number of times that they're like, you can hit circle to interact with this glowy blue thing. Yeah, I know, game. I interacted with a slightly different blue thing in the last level, so I can logically determine that this blue thing will also allow me to press the same button and interact with it in some way.
Okay, how does this tickle your guys' fancy? It's not archaic game design and tutorializing that they're doing. Bentley has crippling OCD, and he has to repeat it over and over because he's afraid if he doesn't, you'll die.
I could buy that.
Right? With how his character is?
Yes.
I could absolutely see that. And I don't know, to go back to Bentley and repetition, I don't know if I like the way that the vaults have a special thing every single level. I remember Curtis, and this was like 12 years ago, complaining that he doesn't like having to find the vault in every level and wait for Bentley to say something, and then you enter the code, and then you get the thing. In 4, you just go up to the area and you press the circle button, you get the power-up. Cool. But I do like that every single one of them has a unique voice line from Bentley. So there's one where he said, I had to overcome my personal demons to come up with this code. I was like, that right there, that makes this game of the year. 12 years later, however long it's been.
A long-ass time.
Yes, if I may, can we give a shout-out to the voice actor for Bentley? He has to have the most perfect, nerdy voice ever for this character, for this turtle who is just so nerdy. Just the way he talks is perfect. It's just kiss. And all the rest of them do a pretty good job, but Bentley is just what sells it.
Now, Kelsey, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but it sounded to me like maybe there was a different voice actor between Sly 1 and Sly 4. Do you know if that's true? Or did he just change how he voiced the character?
I don't actually know. I thought that they kept the same one, at least for Bentley. I remember feeling like when I first started playing, I had wondered if they had a different voice actor for Sly. I could be making that up.
Sly was who I was asking about. Yeah, I might have said the wrong name. No, okay. It's fine. Because I know Carmelita's changed because her accent is different from game to game.
Yes, I think they did not use a single same voice actor from game to game. She keeps changing.
The woman who played her character looked at the character and went, I'm not coming back for another one.
She said, please, I need a shirt.
Again, not to suddenly switch to Sly 4. We have more to talk about the original trilogy, but I find it interesting that when you do the belly dancing scene as Carmelita, she is like, I'm going to kill Bentley for putting me in this outfit and making me do this mission. But at the same time, if you're looking at just a amount of fur exposed, I think that her normal outfit is as revealing as the belly dance outfit because she's only ever really wearing what looks like a tube top or just a bra in her outfit.
The difference is that she has the cop jacket over the top in her normal outfit, and that makes it empowering.
That's true. You know, arms are very sexy, as everyone knows.
Right? Well, it's just that she can visibly arrest you when she's in the cop jacket.
Okay.
It made me mad about that scene.
What's that?
Murray wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And they just ignored him. Like,
that's true.
A really good job as the geisha. Let Murray belly dance for pervy gorillas.
Found his calling.
Yeah.
Oh, great job.
Well, and Joel mentioned not liking the man in the dress joke, and I think we can agree it's kind of an outdone bit, but I didn't get that impression from Murray. I got the impression he just genuinely enjoyed dancing in these colorful outfits. Yeah. So for me, that made it less of a weird joke to make.
For sure.
Mhm.
Let me do a really quick time rewind. I just looked it up, and apparently Sly, Bentley, and Murray have had the same voice actors throughout the games. And as we just were discussing, Carmelita has changed every time.
Okay.
I think my gut reaction is I like 4 better, but I cannot tell if that's because I liked her character's like dialogue or it felt more natural in 4 compared to what she says in like the first 2 games. But
Question about Carmelita. Sly is a thief that only steals from other thieves. We didn't mention that earlier in the episode, but there's no honor in stealing from normal people, and thieves suck. So I'm gonna steal from thieves. So why is Interpol after him? What laws has he broken?
theft.
They say that, and yet I was thinking about it. Like, I believe in the tutorial area for Game 1, you played this more recently than I did, but he is stealing from the police precinct, is he not?
He steals his file in order to figure out like who was behind the assassination of his parents. I don't know if that counts as assassination because they weren't political, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like he was So from the enemies that I have seen, many of them, not all, but quite a few of them pretend to be upstanding citizens in normal society, and then secretly they're stealing from behind the scenes or embezzling or that kind of thing. So I wonder if Mr. McCEO is a thief, like one of the most ruthless villains in all the world, and Sly steals from his business, and then this guy goes to the police. He's like, this raccoon stole my emerald that I earned with my own blood, sweat, and tears. Asterisk.
Yeah, okay. And then you do have that line from Carmelita in 4 where she's like, I realized Sly and I are fighting the same fight, but on opposite sides of the law. So,
That's true.
okay, fair enough. Why don't you join him on the non-cop side then? Just do it. Just
They
get
would
the
take her zap gun. She loved that.
and her jacket. Her sponsors would
They
be
would.
bare. So, Joel, I'm looking at the docket, and it looks like you were going to ask us about the weakest parts of the series.
Yeah, I feel like I've already talked about the things that I would consider weaknesses of the series, but I don't know if you two have necessarily your own things that you want to call out as weaknesses of this original trilogy.
Yes. So, original trilogy. Damn it. I was going to say, we've got a raccoon. The main villain in 4 is a skunk. Where is our possum? The trash trio is not complete.
See, Game 5. Make Sly 5.
Make Sly 5. Put a possum in it. Make it a possum lady.
You defeat her or him, whatever gender they are, at the end of the first tutorial mission, but they were just playing dead. And they're the secret mastermind behind it all at the end of the game.
If the possum was non-binary, could you call them a poss-them?
I think you absolutely could. Do you have any other critiques that you can think of from what little you played?
Said major hand holding, but other than that, not really. I think that these games are very casual friendly, which is something that's missing in most platformers I've attempted. You don't have to do any of the game's mechanics really in order to play the game. You mostly just have to not get seen, but you don't actually have to pickpocket. You don't have to fight any of the guards if you don't want to. Other than the boss battles, there's really nothing about the game that's mandatory, so you could just kind of float through it and be fine.
Related to that, I think that these games also kind of show how games have evolved over the years. Nowadays, with the exception of like Mario, every game has like this overarching story, and you're the grand hero, and you're going to get the shiny sword that can banish the dimensions. But again, Sly 1 is just, I'm going to steal some stuff. They wronged me. They wronged my family. But in the end, it was less focused on the story. It was more like, can we come up with an interesting puzzle where there's 3 flamethrowers and you have to time your jump so you don't get burnt is more the focus.
Yeah, I would agree. Story is probably one of the weakest elements. It's loosely held together. It's all about thieving and definitely a sense of an inherited familial wronged sense, I guess.
Sins of the father kind of thing.
Yeah, especially the first 3 games. But it goes back to each of his ancestors, like Sly feels each wronged very personally.
He is a very justice-oriented individual for someone who's running around thieving stuff.
Yes. And, his buddies, we don't know too much about Murray or Bentley. They're just his orphaned friends. We don't really know much of their backstory aside from they really like doing what they do. Bentley as the mind and mastermind of everything, the tech genius, and Murray is the big brawny guy who drives a van.
Yeah, he likes the sweet destruction. There's a weakness in the game. The one line they had Murray say over and over.
Yes, that was in 4 specifically. There was a mission where Sly and Murray get kind of trapped underground and they don't have access to Bentley and they have to work together to get out. And every Murray section ends with him blowing stuff up with a cannon, and he always has the same sweet destruction. And I hate video games that use the same punchline over and over again.
Yeah, I thought you were about to say I hate video games, and I was going to be like, same.
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
So, just to wrap up the discussion of the first 3 Slys, Kelsey, is there any characters other than Sly, Bentley, Cooper, Murray, and Carmelita that you want to shout out as like interesting or funny or anything like that?
Yes, actually, I believe it's Jin King.
Okay.
He's one of the villains in the first game. I believe he's Area 4. And he's probably has the coolest area. Well, Miss Ruby's area is pretty good.
The Bayou is great.
Yeah, they have such great game design, honestly. So he's a villain in the first game, and in the third game, he comes back, and you have to recruit him as part of the gang.
Okay.
And they do such a good job with redemption in that story. And so initially, when you meet up with him, he's trying to go through this theme of, inner peace and everything. So you have to enter, I believe, his mind and replay the same fight that you did in the first game before he can join you again, because you're trying to rescue his daughter.
Okay.
The villain in that section is trying to marry his daughter. And so I love what they did with that. He's a big panda bear.
I remember seeing him in 3, and then I later had my mind blown that he was actually in the first game. That was cool.
Yeah. They did such a good job with that, and of course, Dimitri.
Yes.
He's not a frog.
He's a lizard of some kind.
Yeah, he's a lizard.
He's an iguana.
That's right. He's an iguana. In the second game, he's the first area, and he owns a nightclub, and he has a seedy underground facility that you're trying to stop because he has one of the clockwork parts. He comes back in game 3. He's also, again, the theme of redemption in the third game. He comes back as an ally, and he's in I believe he's in the pirate section. He does a scuba diving section, and just his particular brand of slang is so much fun. So, yeah, they did a great job with those characters. Most of them are really good, for the
Absolutely.
most part. A few of them are weaker here and there.
Just design-wise, I'm a really big fan of Miss Ruby because she's an alligator.
She's so good, and she has in my opinion, probably the best section.
Okay.
Yeah, in game 1, she has a rhythm fight for her boss fight, which is different than the rest of them. It's really cool. So
I love it. I have to shout out Mugshot. He is the second area of the first game. He has like a casino in Utah, I believe. And when he was young, he was the scrawny runt of the litter, and he got picked on, but then he decided he wanted to become strong, so he worked out. And, that's, whatever. That's Giorno Giovanni, who has a dream from JoJo's Part 5. But when you go to fight him, he's sitting in a chair, and he gets out giant buff arms, dangly little legs. He skipped leg day.
Never skip leg day.
Never skip leg day.
And that's just...
he's a villain. He skipped leg day.
Absolutely. So I think we can get back to the time travel segment of this and talk about Sly 4. I can actually do this succinct summary for this one super well because I actually played to the end. Some stuff is going on Very specific. Okay, so Sly is pretending to have amnesia, and he and Carmelita are a couple, but he's feeling the itch to go back into thieving, and he decides to steal from random Mr. Criminal A. And while he's there, he finds out that random Criminal A is actually the master megamind criminal emperor, and who has a specific grudge against the Cooper clan. He's doing stuff with time travel.
Weird how many people have specific grudges against the Cooper clan. It seems like maybe they're dicks.
It's just, hey, they just hate you because, or they just hate him because he ate him. You know what I'm saying? That's what's going on.
That's the problem with becoming the master of your profession. Everyone else just sees you as a target.
That's true.
You
It's
know.
true. But so there's time travel shenanigans. This guy is targeting the ancestral Cooper clan, and so you go on a time traveling adventure. Now, instead of 5 areas around the world, I mean, you're still going around the world, but you're going to different time periods. And so you meet Ryuichi Cooper, who is a sushi ninja dude, a sushi chef ninja dude who learned how to jump on the little spires. You meet Tennessee Cooper. He has guns. He also invented the rail slide. You meet Bob, a saber-tooth raccoon from back in the day, who invented the first cane. He doesn't actually have a name because he's a caveman. You meet Sir Galeth Cooper, who is a knight who invented grabbing onto rings and launching yourself up, which is a very specific skill to master, to create, to author. That's the word I was looking for. And then the last one is Salim Akupar, I believe is how it's spelled. And he is kind of in an Arabian Nights, kind of Aladdin-inspired area. And he mastered, what did he master? Climbing ropes, I think. But he can do it really fast, which is super impressive. In each of these areas, you get a different costume that Sly can use to access different power-ups. There are puzzles in each area that require you to have the costumes of the other areas if you want to collect them all. And that's basically it. There's a little bit with Bentley's girlfriend has turned evil. We are going to talk about that at length in a little bit, but she's the villain of the 4th area. And the game ends with Sly being lost into a time vortex, and Bentley and Murray and Carmelita are like, we have no idea where he is. Who knows if we're getting a sequel? And until Sly 5 comes out, it's just canon that he's dead. He's just lost in time.
That's true.
But, maybe if one day you're really trying to steal something from your boss and a little raccoon runs in and jumps up on the counter and tips the thing that you're trying to steal over into your hands, that's Sly Cooper. That's his spirit manifesting in that moment.
You'll know it when you hear boom, 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 boom.
If your coworkers suddenly have flashlights, for some reason they're patrolling like back and forth, and you're like, what is going on here?
I have a bone to pick with this game specifically that I forgot to mention earlier. So, conceivably, at least four of these areas could have been the same time periods. Like, there were cowboys in the world at the same time there were samurai in the world. So those two could have existed concurrently. And then the knight could have consisted concurrently with Al Kupar. We don't know for sure where in Arabian history his story takes place, but the Crusades were a thing.
They actually, when you go to each area or somewhere in one of the menus, you can actually see what year each of these are supposed to be. So I think they probably designed it so that they aren't at the same time, but they could be at the same time. Absolutely.
Mhm.
You know what weird critique I have, even though it's not that big of a deal? Not one of the ancestors that you meet are ladies. In the first game, when you get the different power-ups, each one of them is tied to a specific ancestor, and a lot of them are plays off of known historical figures. And several of them do have female names, so it's not something like the thieving genes come through the male side of the family. But I don't know, man. It's a small little thing that really wouldn't have affected much of anything.
Well, and having a female Cooper ancestor would have been great because they could have set up a thing between like her and Murray, for example, and then Murray or Sly could be like, Murray, you can't date my grandma. That's weird. And then they go through time, and Sly's like, yes, saved from Murray dating my grandma.
And then he looks up and he realizes that Murray is gone from the van. And he goes, oh no, we gotta go back. And Bentley said, no, I promised my friend that we wouldn't turn around.
That would have been a better ending than what we got with the cliffhanger.
Oh my goodness. I really, too, wish I guess we're just throwing out like ways that we could have improved the game here and now, but I would have loved if we had met Carmelita's ancestors. If it turns out that, I mean, I don't want her to be like world renowned as the most famous Interpol agent, but it would just be amazing if you met like foxes that were all about justice in every era.
She came from
Yeah.
a long line of cops also chasing the Coopers. Why are we so geographically diverse? What's going on with that?
Oh, you mean the Coopers?
Like, family ancestry is mostly from one of two places, right?
Are they master thieves going around the world to steal things?
Mm.
I think that might be it.
What you're saying is somewhere in the line, someone like a champ.
What?
I get one effort. I know, like Genghis Khan, right? Something like 4% of the population can trace their ancestry back to Genghis Khan because he went around and he had so many babies. So one Cooper traveled the world having sex with lots of ladies, and that's where all of these Cooper children descended
The
from.
James Bond of raccoons.
You misunderstood my intention. What I was saying is that each thief might go to a new area to steal from that place and then settle down and have a family, and then over, 5 generations, suddenly you're on another continent. But yes, perhaps Bob, with the power of time travel that he got from the future, went around fucking like a champ.
Bob Wood. He gives
He
off
would.
those vibes.
Here's another question that comes up in every Anthro thing I've ever watched. What about interspecies? Not species exactly, but like if Sly and Carmelita had a child in some fanfic that I'm currently writing, would it be exactly half raccoon, half fox? Would it be like a coin flip? Would it be you take your dad's species every time?
I can answer this. I've seen Disney movies. The girls would all be foxes and the boys would all be raccoons.
Mm.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
That's true.
absolutely. They all take after their, and then you have one child that is a fox, but enjoys like thieving and can spire jump and stuff, and is a trans allegory.
Okay, we needed one of those in this Anthro game. Heavy-handed social metaphors. We love them.
Racism is out. We've already solved that problem. Trans inclusion is in.
All furries are trans. And they're all valid. Trans lives matter.
Oh my goodness gracious. So, Kelsey, in general, what did you think of this game? Especially considering that there was a large gap between the original trilogy and this one. So, how do you feel they returned to form with that?
I think they did a pretty good job overall. So, my understanding of this, the development for 4, of course, was that Sucker Punch had finished Game 3. We moved on to deal with the Infamous series and develop that. And Sanzaru wanted to continue. So, they actually started to make the 4th game on their own, pitched it to Sony, and Sony really liked what they saw to the point where they hired them to port the first 3 games to the PlayStation 3 and then eventually the Vita, and then let them work on the 4th game. So for what was initially a fan project, this is a really good game. I suppose it's not the most fair to look at it through that lens, but it's definitely, I can't remove that part, especially since as a Jack and Daxter kid, what happened with that, of course, they made the first 3 games. They made Jack X, which is actually a really good racing game. A lot of people put that game down, but it actually did have plot while having good.
Okay, the Jack X Defender has logged on.
But Naughty Dog moved on to Uncharted, and High Impact Games took over for Jack and Daxter: The Lost Frontier. As a big fan, I tried to track that game down. I could never find it, and I'm glad I did because I've looked up Let's Plays. Terrible game. Terrible game. So, from that perspective, I think Sanzaru did a great job for the most part. There's a few things here and there that they could have improved upon. The loading times were a little bit atrocious. The frame rates there, especially in the 3rd area with Bob, that was kind of annoying quite at times. I wanted to say that was my favorite area, but I couldn't say that because of the frame rate drops in that. I think that was the worst area, and it affected too, like the jump pads and whatnot. I like that they probably took in some fan feedback. I believe a lot of after the 3rd game, which is when you play more than just the main gang, you play Murray's Guru, you play as Jin King. there's several other characters that you collect along the way. You only play them once or twice, and honestly, it doesn't end up being that big of a deal. I could see someone's annoyance being, well, you play them twice, you learn how to play as them, and then you never
And
play
then
them
gone.
again. So what they did with the ancestors, of course, play very much like Sly. They don't have quite all of his powers at the same time, but they play very much like Sly. And of course, as mentioned before, Sly is the most fun to play.
Yep.
So that was interesting. Then Sly gets the costumes where he gains special powers that way. So that was an interesting concept. And if there were a fifth game, that would be fun to see more ancestors and continue with that route. We've talked about, Carmelita wishing she had more backstory, and the dancing mini game could have been better. Honestly, I don't have too many complaints about that. I would say that the one part in the second episode where she has to fight, what is it, the coyote for
Right.
yeah,
Shooting contest. Yeah.
the shooting contest, and he's like, well, you need to give me a big ol' kiss, and
Yeah.
he makes kissy noises at her, and she's so annoyed. It's like, really,
At least it was maybe accurate for the time.
could have been, yeah.
Like, how many women ran around dressed like Carmelita who were not ladies of the evening in the Wild West?
Does that mean prostitute, or does that mean?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Okay, I'm sorry.
Joel apparently is less familiar with prostitutes than I am, so take that as you will.
Listen, if you were trying to imply that Carmelita is a vampire, that kind of lady of the night, I'd ask you, why are you reading my fan fictions? You're not one of my beta readers. That was supposed to be a surprise.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the game is really good, and I think that, again, having played a bit of 1 and 2 to refresh my memory, thank gosh that these games continue to improve mechanically as far as, like, in the first game, there was still the live system, and I died so many times thinking that I could jump to this platform and being slightly off, and I didn't really have that problem in Sly 4, so I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I felt like there were a lot of very small but noticeable quality of life upgrades.
Yes.
You were saying, it really comes across as a game made by fans. And it reminds me of Sonic Mania in that way, where they took all of the things that they liked from the original games and they refined them to the point that a lot of the problems that were present in the original games were reduced.
Yeah. And speaking of, too, they brought back the bottles, which were missing from the third game. They were present in games 1 and 2. I was so sad when they took that out because it's an excellent collectathon. The bottles they exemplify something that we haven't talked about yet, which is I think Sly as a series really excels with sound design.
Yes.
It has the excellent clink, 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 and then as it breaks, it's very satisfying to break. I mentioned the boom, 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 boom as you sneak up on guards or as you sneak around a corner. They really do excel with sound design, and they realized that and brought that back with bottles, making it so much fun.
Yeah, the little clink is really nice. And I remember there was a particular sound in the Japanese level that we all enjoyed very much, where the bird screams when you murder them.
Yes, it's perfect. It is truly delightful. It's kind of like a inhale and a scream. It's very delightful. So, they really seem to, especially because part of their deal of Sony being that they had to port over the games, they probably had a really good look at what they liked from each of the games, how they noticed each game improved on things from the past, and then were able to put in some things that they felt should have been, in, like, say, Game 3, like the bottles. For example, in second game, they implemented the treasures that you have to race back to the hideout. However, they don't automatically convert to currency. Of course, that's in game 3. It's still in game 4. So they did a really good job overall with, like, taking a look at what worked well, what do we wish was still there, and then kind of actually just making the series go on. Again, bringing back the ancestors and having you play as them. I think if they had made a game 5, which they will not because now Facebook owns them, and we are all quite sad about this fact. is if you could have played as different ancestors in different time periods.
Oh, sure.
Because you only get to play as the ancestor of that time period you're visiting. So I think that would be kind of fun to be able to play as different ancestors in different times.
For sure. The other thing too that makes it feel like it's for the fans is in the second game, at least, when you collect the treasures, they're only worth monetary value. In 4, they unlock a special like mini game you can play just to chill after you get all of them in the area. And there's a gallery where you can see all the ones that you've collected, and the special treasures that you can get by collecting all the clue bottles are all tied to previous character games. So there's like the Guru Staff, which reduces health. There's the hat, I think, of the frog, who is the first boss from the first game and stuff. And so that's really neat. They are interweaving these different characters into the different kind of mythologies or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a good point too with the mini games. I think they did a very good job with the mini games. It's probably has maybe the best mini games. Game 3 does have that excellent pirate game.
Yeah.
So there's that. But no, they did a good job making the mini games not annoying, which is kind of the best thing you can do with mini games is they're a distraction from the main game. Most of the time it's like, well, I'm not playing the game for these mini games. I'm playing the game for X, Y, and Z. And neither, mini games is like LLL. If I want to play this for, there may be 1 or 2 mini games that are fun, but for the most part, in the rest of the main series, they end up being annoying. Have you gotten yet, Joel, to the car racing game with Murray?
Yes, I had that.
That is probably my least favorite racing section of any game I've ever played. I may have encountered something else that I've blacked out, but good God, that was terrible.
So many games had racing mini games
They
back
did.
in the day. I was telling Kelsey when you had to step away with the puppy Joel that I wasn't aware of like home console video games until the original Xbox. So I grew up with Pokemon on my Game Boy Color, but that was the only game I played until Xbox. And then I didn't have like a Nintendo home console until the Wii. So it's fascinating to me to go back and discover these platformers that a lot of my peer group kind of played as kids and go, why are these all so similar?
I think there's only so many different ideas you can come up with that make sense in the universe.
Yeah.
I think the cool thing about seeing the evolution of game design, and Sanzaru is the name of the company. Sanzaru, thank you. Like Sanzaru making Sly 4, I feel like you had kind of the first batch of video games, right? And then like 20 years later, you get to the point where people who were fans of those games are now making games.
Yes. Yeah.
It's sort of like how in computer programming, once someone has come up with a good algorithm, there might be improvements to be made, but everyone starts using it. And so I think that once you land on a good piece of game design, I think that the really successful ones build upon that. Everyone says that all shooters are basically Doom with enhancements. And so, yeah, I think that 4 really does feel like a more modern game. There's a little bit more story to it, it feels like. Maybe that's just a subjective opinion, but it certainly is there. Each of the characters have a thing that they go through. They have like a moment where Murray has one where he thinks that he messed things up, and Bentley has one where his girlfriend has turned on him, and Cooper has to make up with Carmelita. And these really have a satisfying wrap up in my taste, but they did try to give each of them like an arc for a single episode.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think probably the weakest part of it, of course, would be the main villain. Each of the rest of the villains are pretty good. There are a few retreads of previous games. There's a tiger in game 2, and of course there's a tiger boss for your first boss in Sly 4. So they do a decent job of making them different as much as you can for a cartoony and amorphized tiger villain boss, but definitely the villain was probably the weakest part for the overall series. So they probably Sanzaru they could have figured out how to do the main villain just a little bit better. That would be where I would like game 5 to focus on developing a main villain.
That'd be cool. Did either of you have any villains from 4 that kind of stood out to you? Any of the first level bosses?
Hang on. Who do we have? First off,
Tiger who's on fire.
El Jefe.
Jefe.
We have the angry whistle boy, the armadillo who gets big.
Pick the armadillo.
And then you have the grizzly bear. You have the Black Knight, which is actually just Penelope, and then you have Miss Decibel, who's the elephant with a horn tragically stuck in her trunk.
That she could have gotten removed this whole time.
Yeah,
And
and
didn't.
she's pantsless.
Yeah. Okay.
She's Donald ducking.
No, stop. We have to talk about the caked up elephant. Because all of the animals in this world wear clothing. They are not walking around naked or with just a shirt on. Well, Murray is, but everybody else has clothes on. So Miss Decibel has like this cape, but otherwise she's naked. And I'm looking at her and I go, Joel, that elephant is naked. And he goes, she's an elephant. It doesn't matter. And then she turns around and her cape moves and you see these big clapping elephant cheeks. And like, I just didn't feel like looking at that.
I feel like we found the subtitle for today's bonus episode.
Big clapping elephant cheeks.
Yep, absolutely. That's going in the thumbnail.
Well, don't they even give her a cap? Right? Doesn't she have like some sort of hat?
I think so.
Mhm.
But no pants.
No pants.
Not even underpants.
And no shirt. Even Carmelita gets a bra.
That's true.
So I very much object to that. But I liked that El Jefe the tiger was on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had fire and lightning abilities, which is super sexy of him.
And
Yes.
a sword. I was about to say, I also think that's very sexy of him.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. He brings the sex appeal with episode 1. And I think that fight ranks up there with my favorite, and Miss Decibel as well. That's kind of more of a rhythm-based game.
Mm.
Would you say for the
Sure, I guess.
an element to it?
An elephant to it.
Oh, yes, I would. Toothpick is okay as a villain. The visual of him getting huge is odd, but pleasing at
Yeah,
the same time.
I feel that.
And then you as you are trying to defeat Toothpick in the boss fight, he is caught in the flames of the fire for the coal that is making the train go, and it feels an awful lot like a very abusive type of murder.
Oh yeah. Well, and so at the end of the game, it gives you a little update on what each of the characters are up to. So that includes all of the major villains. It includes Dimitri, and then the main 3 and Carmelita. Well, not the main 3 minus Sly, and then Carmelita. And his thing was that he wanted to be known, I guess. Like, he hates people like defacing statues of him. He wants a statue of him erected. He wants everyone to come to his birthday party, I guess. But he fades from relevance, so that's kind of like a karmic punishment.
Mhm.
But he had a second character trait, which is that he hated loud noises, and he was around them so much in the prison that he went deaf. And the picture is him on train tracks with a train approaching and the other prisoners trying to warn him. He got killed.
I thought they were laughing.
Oh no, I think they were trying to tell him, like, get out of the way, idiot. You're going to get crushed by that train.
Oh gosh. So everybody at this table has met my sister's terrible little dog Drumstick, who I love very much. Toothpick gives me such powerful Drumstick vibes.
You're not wrong.
Like, he's just a nasty little man.
Yeah.
And Drumstick absolutely would hate whistles. She absolutely would like Hulk out and try to punch you and summon windstorms. But yeah, no, it's just big Drumstick vibe. So I liked the Toothpick fight. I thought it was one of the more interesting fights of the different villain fights. Did not care for the Grizz.
Oh no,
And
not at all.
really didn't care for the fact that you don't even fight him as Sly.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. The Grizz, I feel like the voice direction that they chose for him just really did not seem to match him at all. There was just too much going on with the Grizz, and it just felt tonally inconsistent.
You know what the Grizz feels like to me? He feels like a white suburban dad doing a rapper voice.
Yes, he definitely has that wankster, white gangster vibe.
Yes.
Yeah, and he seems like a total buffoon. I think that really, as I'm thinking about the different characters, El Jefe has kind of this menacing aura about him that from what I remember when he talks to other characters like his guards and stuff. But like Miss Decibel can't figure out that La Paradox absolutely hates her. Like that, you can see that coming from a mile away. But she's just like, oh, Cheryl or whatever his name is, he loves me so much. It's like, no, you stupid lady. Like, come on, man. Or come on, woman, as the case may be. Grizz's voice direction was a little strange. I didn't like Toothpick's egocentrism, and even the Black Knight, even if it wasn't Penelope, even if it was like random chimpanzee man in a robot suit, when you're following him and he's like, "Oh, all of the technology is failing. I need to update it and whatever." Like, I wasn't threatened by the Black Knight, so the only one by elimination that I liked was El Jefe. And La Paradox, the only thing that's good about him is that you can throw your cane into his head during the final quick time event, and he goes, "Oh," and then you slam him into the ground.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I have to agree. I did not like the Grizz at all. And I especially did not like Penelope as the Black Knight. I felt like it was a cheap retread of Game 3 when she is the Black Baron. Surprise, surprise, spoilers, unfortunately. But in kind of reverse, where it turns out that she's actually evil after all because she doesn't care for the direction of Bentley. And she's hardly, we were talking a little bit before the podcast, she's hardly in it for the first 3 episodes. Like, we know she's missing, and yet we forget about that up until it brings up the point that, oh yeah, Penelope's still missing. It's like, oh yeah, that's right, that was a plot point at some point. And oh gee, I wonder if she's going to be in this episode.
So for those who haven't played the games or haven't seen like a Let's Play or something, most levels will have kind of an introduction where it's kind of like 2D animated storybook style, and Sly is just kind of like, us and the gang just barely managed to escape Mugshot's prison, and now we headed to Paris where we could find more answers. And so you get one in episode 4 that's like, Murray was still upset about having not found Penelope, who disappeared into a time vortex, which I want to talk about in a second. But they only bring up the fact that he's missing Penelope right then and there, and that's the only time when the loading screens say, did you know that Penelope once disguised herself as a villain in the area where the villain's face is unknown? It just, if they had brought up Murray's worry in every episode leading up to this, and they had him getting more, or not Murray, gosh dang it, Bentley. If Bentley was getting more and more worried, like after episode 1, it was kind of like he was upset that he couldn't find Penelope, but he kept a brave face. And then after episode 2, he was getting more and more distraught, but he knew that it was important to restore the timeline. But no, they just blatantly advertised that this was going to happen. There's a couple of other things about the Penelope storyline that I just kind of like, I want to nitpick really, really carefully. The whole, so the thieving gang broke up after the events of 3, whatever happened at the end there. And Bentley comes back and basically is like, hey, I was doing some time travel experiments, and Penelope just vanished. It was like Endgame in there, and you're like, oh, okay, what happened? But then you find out that Penelope is willingly working with the bad guy. So why did she get vanished like that? She should have just like left in the middle of the night, maybe left a note, or maybe she could have said, I'm going on vacation, and then the reveal that she was actually back in time could have been like, what are you doing here? And secondly, it would have been kind of interesting if she had been the villain of the 5th episode, and the other 4 episodes could have had people who have weird technology, like they have more technologically advanced weapons than you would think that they have. And Sly could like maybe offhandedly mention it. Murray would have no idea. He's not a thinking type, but maybe Bentley could get real quiet and be like, that is kind of weird. The enemies do have some interesting missiles. And then when the reveal happens, maybe Bentley figured it out. Perhaps he was lying to himself or something like that. He didn't want to face the truth, but now that she's threatening Sly and Murray, he has to take a stand.
Definitely. Yeah, just because Penelope was, for at least a portion of time, a villain in the 3rd game, and she was this knight and deals with technology, doesn't mean that they couldn't do it again in game 4, but just the way they did it was too cheap. They didn't have the proper setup for the right payoff.
And so something that is really interesting is when, I don't know if there's a term for this in literary circles, but when an author accidentally foreshadows something but then doesn't pay it off because they weren't doing it on purpose, Penelope turning and Bentley being like, what the heck? And then the very next episode, we find out that one of the other bad guys has mind control technology. And there's time travel involved. Like there's a couple of different ways they could have solved this in such a way that it's like that's not the real Penelope. She was mind controlled. The Paradox went back and changed something about her or something, but instead they just went with, no, she's kind of crazy. Like she legitimately thinks that being evil is the best way to help her boyfriend.
Even if they had just had a scene during like the intro cinematics where it had been like Penelope and Bentley had been arguing a lot lately, but now she'd disappeared and he was worried about her. You know?
Imagine if it was like Bentley but taken. Listen, I don't know who you are, but I will find you and I will hack your computer. I will digitally change all of your passwords.
What I do have is a very specific set of shells.
Watch out for my sleep dart. You'll wake up.
In Sly 2, when you play as Bentley the first time, it goes, you can shoot a sleep dart. And then when you put them to sleep, it goes, now you can plant a bomb on them to make sure that they don't wake up or they stay that way permanently. It's like, oh, God. Sly, I thought you were a thief who stole from other thieves, but you're also just a murderer.
He's a thief who steals from other thieves, and he's a murderer who murders murderers.
Oh. Okay.
And that makes it okay. Did you guys know Dexter is coming back? Just as a quick aside.
I've heard it, and I have no opinions.
Yeah. Anyway, Joel, you laid out this beautiful docket for us, and we have now been going for an hour and 30 minutes, and we still have several questions. So what would you like to address next?
So I love having guests on the podcast, and I have learned to just like let go. Not all of these questions need to be asked or talked about. This was sort of like if we wanted to make a full-length episode and we didn't know what to talk about, what could we focus on? One thing I do want to talk about is the different Sly ancestors. And also, does Carmelita want to sleep with every single one of them? She
Out of spite, yes. She's projecting. She wants to sleep with Sly, but she can't admit she wants to sleep with Sly. So she's finding all these other men incredibly attractive.
And are also master thieves.
Yeah, but
she knows that.
But not her master thieves. She doesn't have to arrest these guys. They died thousands of years ago.
They were products of their time.
But yeah, no, Carmelita definitely spends a bit of screen time talking with both not Ryuichi, Tennessee and Sir Galif. She likes them. Sir Galif is a little. So here's the breakdown of the 5 personalities you get here. You get Ryuichi, who seems to be fairly serious. He takes everything seriously, and he he's prone to proverbs that no one else really understands. Tennessee is kind of like, yeah, partner, and he's from the South, and he's very charmsy, very folksy. Bob doesn't really have much of a personality because he mostly just goes, but he's a big caveman guy. He's sweet, I guess. Galith is goofy but very valiant and almost too much so, to the point where he attacks the Black Knight, and everyone's like, "You're an idiot. He's gonna take your cane," and then the Black Knight takes his cane. And then Salim's personality trait is he's old and he does not want to be here anymore, but they're forcing him to do all this work.
He projects very much done with this shit.
He kind of feels like the stereotypical Jewish mother, but as a guy, just kind of like
one more job, then I'm out.
Yeah,
that's Salim. Can we all agree, Tennessee Kid Cooper, sexiest ancestor?
Yes,
with the best name.
I can.
There's something weirdly appealing about a cowboy with a name that's a state.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll buy that. Yeah.
I think Kingsman would like to have a word with you.
Louisiana Slim,
Yeah, I think in terms of just like pure attractiveness, I think that I would put Ryoichi on the same level as Tennessee, but I think in terms of personality, it seems like Tennessee would be the type to have a good time.
Absolutely.
He's here for a good time, not a long time.
I do wish that they would stop making the joke of, I don't know what this thing is, and Bentley goes, oh, let me dumb it down for your time period. I get that sometimes you just can't help but use expressions from the modern day or your time or whatever, but when they tell, I think it's Salim, that we're going to install a bug in Miss Decibel's office, and he's like, what's a bug going to do? just say you're going to listen into her, and the problem solved.
Agreed. Yeah, I had the same exact issue as you, Joel. I was like, come on now. It's pretty easy to just find a way to talk to somebody in a normal way. Just say, hey, we have a way to listen. You could have even said, oh, we have a magic spell.
Yes.
That probably would have been more believable than saying a bug.
Right? In English for dot meme.
Yeah.
I will say that I feel like the ancestors felt pretty dumb to me in that respect.
Mhm.
Like, if you came up to me and you mentioned using some piece of technology that I was unfamiliar with, I wouldn't be that kind of confused. Like, I would mostly figure it out from context. And if what I couldn't figure out from context, like, I still don't feel like I'd be like, a bug? What is skittering around the room going to have to do with anything?
Yes, definitely. It felt like they were verbalizing inner character thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you can tell that these games are largely made for kids from the simplistic story and some of the jokes. We already mentioned that I don't like the Murray very much in this game because it seems like he's gone back to being a butt monkey as opposed to a fully fledged character. Did any of the arcs work in your opinion? And I'll have you answer first, Kelsey. Insofar as, from what I remember, you have Murray worried that he can't help the team because he can't climb. That's where it starts. I think there's a second mission that he messes up, and he's like, "Oh, I keep messing everything up." Bentley has my girlfriend dumped me, but I'm going to save my friends, and he gets over that pretty freaking quick, to be honest. And then I guess Sly doesn't really have that much of a story. His thing is trying to rekindle with Carmelita, so that's more Carmelita's story deciding to forgive him. I don't think any of these stories worked, but Kelsey, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Perhaps they're introduced at a little bit too late because, Murray's worries that he can't climb I believe that's introduced in episode 3.
That's with Bob, yeah.
Yeah, and with Bentley, he has his worry, except he's not worried at all in the first 3 episodes. And in episode 4, he suddenly remembers that he has a girlfriend who went missing. And Sly had pretend amnesia from the events of the 3rd game, and so he's dating Carmelita. I do think they could have emphasized how the pages for the Thievius Raccoonus are disappearing. They could have emphasized that a little bit more, considering how important overall to the series legacy is, the Cooper legacy.
Well, and like, what if Sly had started the game without any of his thieving abilities because those pages had disappeared, and when he went back in time and helped, he slowly got those abilities back?
I mean, yes, kind of. To build on that idea, what if you're in the middle of a mission, your tutorial mission that you get in every game where you're trying to steal a thing, and you're jumping from spire to spire, and then you try to jump to the next spire, and then the blue dot disappears, and he just like falls or something, and he has to catch himself with a cane.
Yeah.
And then Bentley could be like, "Come in, Sly, what happened?" He's like, "I don't know, Bentley, something strange is happening."
Yeah.
Awesome.
That would be.
Can we address that it's a little messed up of Carmelita to be taking advantage of someone's... Is it a mental illness when you have amnesia? Do you think it counts?
I don't think so.
Well, it's like it's a thing that's wrong with your brain, right? It's a result of brain trauma. And so she's taking advantage of that and dating him, even though he doesn't remember who she is. That's a little fucked up, Carmelita.
That is a little fucked up. That is. I have to say.
I could see the argument for it, but it's to me it feels like she wants to be with him, but he has this major character flaw. He's a thief, and so this is like a chance for him to like maybe what if his life had been different. But I guess in a sense it is kind of taking advantage.
Let me put it this way. Let's say you never put your socks in the laundry basket. And then I thought you got hit on the head and couldn't remember how to do anything. And I leaned over and I went, "You really like putting your socks in the laundry basket and also buying me Starbucks every day. That's what you like. That's who you are."
Okay, I guess so. I guess I'm just saying I'm a little more tentative about accepting this than it seems that you two are.
Is it really taking advantage of, though, because he's spending what would be both your money? So
True. In this hypothetical. Plus, Sly does consent to it because he doesn't actually have amnesia. And is that messed up? He's tricking
That's incredibly messed up.
A type of relationship that she didn't know she had.
See, and that's what I kind of meant when I said that I feel like none of the stories really worked. And I think like there's a specific point I can point to each one about like, wait, that doesn't make sense. So Bentley, like I said, he hides inside of his shell when he learns that Penelope is evil, but then during the final fight he shows up in a robot suit. He apparently was building that entire time, even though he was too depressed to talk to the others. But then when he starts fighting Penelope's robot suit, he's like, please don't do this. We don't have to fight. You built a robot suit, Bentley. Why did you build a robot suit if you thought that you were going to be able to talk to her? Murray is worried that he's messing things up. He's been messing things up since 2001.
And he
constantly
about it before.
all the time. I mean, he did get Bentley paralyzed, but at the same time, he had a whole journey about that. But like, come on, man. Bentley can't climb either, and you're mad that you can't climb? Like, whatever, man. Different characters have different circle button reactions. And that's the whole reason why you fight the Grizz as Murray in that episode, is that's how he regains his mojo. And then Sly clearly needs to try to explain to Carmelita his thought process and try to make amends and try to talk to her. And she eventually just sort of forgives him because she got kidnapped, I think. I don't know exactly where she decided 100% to trust him. For a couple of episodes, she's like, I'll help you because we have a common goal. I'm stuck in time and this bad guy's going to take over the world. But they never really make up until I think at the end when they get stuck in a cage and then he's like, "Oh no, I'll save you," and that overrides any lies that he had told her. I don't think that's good enough.
Agreed. Yeah. I, in my opinion, listening to you two go back and forth, I think that overall this stems from having a really weak villain. If they had a stronger villain, probably that would have had a stronger overarching plot throughout. The Paradox just feels kind of like an afterthought, especially his fight. The fight is it's like nothing else you do in that game. It's very basic. It's mostly just button mashing. And so, yes, he's correct me if I'm wrong, but he's upset and butthurt over the legacy of the Cooper clan overshadowing his families.
Yes.
But specifically his, because I remember asking Joel, like, why didn't he just go back in time and make his father successful at the heist that got him arrested? And it's because he doesn't care about his family's legacy. He cares about being known as the greatest thief. So if he stole the legacy of the Cooper clan, then he was better than them.
Well, and not only that, but he was so deranged that he didn't just want to beat the Coopers. He wanted to erase them from time. He says in the final confrontation, which is, what the hell? His name is Le Paradox. Well, I have questions. Did he take on that name because he discovered the time travel thing and he goes, this is kind of a paradox? Whoa, villain name. Or was he born with that name the same way that Scar as a child was known as Scar in The Lion King?
It was actually a mispronunciation of his name. Because he's French, you see, his name is actually Le Paradox. The E-A-U-X. They just pronounce it with the X because we're Americans.
Whatever. Oh, I see. Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
I think it actually, to go back to what you were saying, Kelsey, about making him a more threatening villain, if he was going back in time and erasing history, he could target Carmelita. If he wants to hurt Sly, he could go back in time and he could mess with Bentley and Murray and Carmelita, maybe even Dimitri if we want to pretend that he's like this really cool character. He might be from 3. In 4, he's just kind of there as another joke ongoing that nobody understands what he's saying. But if he went back in time and he messed with Carmelita's past, and then Sly could try to show how much he cared by trying to fix it, and at one point maybe she could say, I don't want your help, and then they could have that heart-to-heart conversation.
Right. Then that definitely would have been a stronger component too, because in the first 3 games it does go on about how, yes, Sly does have these Thievius Raccoonus master abilities that he learns from his ancestors, but really he has innate ability. He's a natural. He doesn't always need to rely on that. So instead of relying on the ancestors and the time periods, it would have been nice to focus again on the friends, on Carmelita, as a constant antagonist, but never a villain, and just delving into their backstories and why they want to be there. That might have been stronger if they, execution is the name of the game. But that could have been really interesting.
Absolutely. Quick aside, does the puppy banging her bone against the sides of the kennel remind you of like a prisoner rattling a tin cup in bars?
No, because most of the time I think that what she's trying to do is trying to chew her way out. So it's more like if a prisoner was gnawing on the bars just constantly with their gums pulled back so the guards can see their teeth. I'll get out of here someday, Jim.
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
One really quick note, I don't really have much thought, but if there's time travel involved, it'd be kind of cool if they just had like a bonus level or something, maybe after you beat the game or if you 100% it, where you go to the future and you meet Sly's like great grandchild or something.
We'll see if they have any fox characteristics or attributes.
It's an orange raccoon. Brings up a point. All the raccoons are colors that raccoons can actually be, all the ancestors, except for Salim, who is purple. Why is he purple?
He fell into a vat of food dye when he was a kid. It's the kid friendly equivalent of the Joker backstory.
But there probably would not have been much purple dye around at that time period because purple was a sign of wealth. So are they implying that because Salim is old, that means he's really wealthy? We have a baby boomer aspect going on there.
Some generational
wealth.
That's excellent. So with some of the script doctoring, I guess, that we've done for Sly 4, maybe we could focus on our final question of the episode. We know that Sly 5 probably isn't going to happen. Never say never. There's what do you call that? Like GoFundMe's and fan created projects and stuff. But what in your dream world where there was a Sly 5, what do you think it would need, or what would you want it to have?
I have a good summary, like a good idea for the story.
Don't say Carmelita Sly sex scene. Don't say Carmelita Sly.
I'm not writing your fanfic.
That's right. It's my own fanfic.
Oh, okay. So Sly is misplaced in time, right? So he lands in a place and he doesn't know how long he's going to be there, and then he gets shifted to another place. So he comes up with a plan for how to tell Bentley and Murray where he is by planting clues in history. And so he lands in a place and he figures out like what would be the most valuable thing to target. And I'll go there and I'll leave my mark there. And so each area is him finding that different way. And then throughout the game, you might have flashes to the future where Bentley and Murray are trying to figure this out together. And it would be kind of a concurrent timeline story. And then at the end, they get reunited.
Oh.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, if there's any ancestors involved, I would like to see more mixing and matching, not just the one ancestor to that time period. I think would be fun. And that would tie in well to the humor of, oh, well, what's this thing do? Is it a bug or whatever? That would make more sense if they were just being introduced to random time periods rather than just having a bunch of gobbledygook techno jargon thrown at them.
Sir Galeth on a pirate ship, and he just cannot stand up. He keeps falling over. He's getting seasick. He's like, can we please go to another time, please?
Yeah. Pirate ancestor, very important. I would love to bring back the element of using more of the different techniques you learn from your ancestors from the first game.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That would be fun. No car combat. No cars. Nothing to do with cars.
No cars at all. No chicken car. No. Those mini games were not fun.
No. They were terrible.
They were pretty bad. I think one thing that they could do is instead of finding the clue bottles around the level, that's a pretty interesting idea. You could keep it in, but in addition, I would love to see like optional side missions. Like you can go around and find the 3 clues hidden in the hub world in order to unlock the door. And inside the door is not anything that helps you take down the villain. It's like some minor crime lord or something, and you could steal something, and then that would give you a an optional ability that makes the game easier, but it would actually be a level that you play as opposed to buying it from the thief net or you
Sure.
unlock it by finding the clue bottle.
Yes, perhaps it would take less clue bottles to open a safe, and that would give you the side mission, at which point you could find more clue bottles for the next safe and side mission.
I really like that. That'd be awesome. And then, I think I had something, but I've forgotten it.
Oh no.
It is gone. Okay, yeah, so I am all done with my thoughts for what should be in Sly 5.
Less food jokes with Murray.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, of course.
I like Murray, and I don't even mind that his thing is like he's the bigger guy. He likes to eat, but it's just that they're nonstop that I have a problem with.
Yeah, he only briefly takes a pause from it to have his moment where he's worried about not being able to climb or whatever. It'd be great if he, I don't know, everywhere they went, he ended up becoming like the dance king. You know, like he does it at the Geisha house.
Yes.
He does it at the spittoon. He keeps doing it, and everyone's like, Murray, what are you doing? You have like this compulsive need to dance everywhere he goes.
Right? Yes, and that could be linked in with them abandoning vehicles forever, is that Murray has finally found his true calling. It is not as a demo derby van driver. Instead, he has become one with the dance.
Yes, absolutely. And that has been your
Do final thought outro goes here.
Thanks again for joining us, Kelsey. And again, that is at Sherpa Whale on Twitter if you want to follow her, where you cover lots of different things. You talk about video games from time to time, and health safety things.
Yes. I definitely wish I had more of a focus on my Twitter. It's just whatever I'm thinking about at the moment or seeing on my timeline. One of these days, I will find more of a focus, though.
Absolutely. That's what I keep telling myself as well. Thanks for listening, everyone. Goodbye.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Bonus episode.
Bonus episode.
Episode of King of the What Now. Bye, everyone.